So during this PowerPoint, we're going to be looking at the data analysis of what I found out during the games of N-ball. So the data we will be looking at is passes, distance covered, heart rate, and lactate levels during the games of N-ball. The data I've collected is across 3 games. So the first bit of data is from the first ever game we played, which will be the lactate levels. The second game is the game of which we collected analytic data, so we could then put it into a graph to see how well the game was played. And the second game is after an intervention to show what we have changed and how it can be changed to increase a certain development within the game, whether that be passing, scoring, or making space. So to get on with the PowerPoint. So to start off, we're going to be looking at what the key attributes in N-ball. The main key attributes in N-ball are as follows. Acceleration is key to getting away and making space. So this will also link to the heart rate potentially that we'll be looking at later on, and the lactate levels, which also link together within a certain thing. So it'll also, linking onto the acceleration away is changing direction. What I mean by this is being able to move quickly and swiftly away from the opposition team with the ball or without the ball to make space, or to be able to get in for a pass or get away and make a pass yourself. We're also going to be looking at muscular endurance. While we're going to be looking into muscular endurance again, which will be shown later on down the line, but to give a bit of background, it's are we able to keep up with the pace of the game and how intense it is, and being able to move up and down the court without struggling as much. And the throwing power, being able to make a pass, whether that be long distance, short distance, or in between. So during this, we'll be looking at basketball and handball. They're very, very similar sports in the way that the passes are made. So there's a very similar passing range, but also how you've got to run from one end to another end of the court in very quick succession. And this is why I'll be comparing data from one of these sports to the N-ball data that I've collected during this presentation. So what are we going to be looking at? We're going to be looking at the overload effect, and how we can change it in the psychological behaviour of the team when they have more players than another player. This is called part-task environment, to help replicate a game situation without being in that game. So when looking into N-ball and how it can be adapted similar to handball, it is known for the players are able to be taken off or sent off when playing handball, and this also can happen in N-ball. So we're going to be using a situation that can happen in handball, but also happen in N-ball for this data to be collected together. So as you can see from these stats, on the right hand side is a handball player, and this is the distance covered, heart rate that they have done during the game, and on the left hand side is the N-ball players. When I say N-ball player, I mean student athlete. And this is what we covered in the first ever game of N-ball when we used the GPS trackers, which allowed us to track the distance covered, distance per meter, maximum heart rate, and a lot of other different things. But these are the key information that I believe that were key to help him show the data and get my point across. So what you can see straight away and what is a standout is the distance covered in a handball game is significantly higher than what is naturally covered in the N-ball game. What this could suggest is they play a lot tighter, or they are running, making runs a lot quicker, well, a lot more frequently than what we were in the N-ball game. What is very, what you can see as well, which is very similar again, is the heart rate. So what does the heart rate suggest to us? So the heart is near enough at maximum level for all the athletes on the left as they are aged from 19 to 23. So the maximum heart rate is where they're nearly at with some of these, if not they're exceeding. What this shows is that their heart's beating a lot faster, which means more oxygen is needed to get around the body for muscles to stop muscle fatigue, so that the intensity of the game can carry on throughout the session. So as you can see in player participant 2, is that his heart rate is near enough at peak, if not at peak level for a 19-year-old. This suggests us how hard and intense the game was and how fast and how quick and he was moving. Whereas on participating 4, what you can see here is the heart rate isn't as high, even though the age range is the same. This indicates that the intensity that he played at wasn't as high as what participating 2 did, showing that the way the game was played, participating 4 was on a different team to 2. So maybe that shows a correlation of the psychological battle, which we'll see later on the line. So what I've said here is you can see the stats are very similar in the sport and the distance covered and the heart rate. So this suggests the intensities are very similar. And this is why I've used the 2 sports, because of how similar the data is, what I've corresponded to. Yes, they're not exact same, but I'm just showing the differences. As you can see, there's a lot more distance covered, as I said before, and the heart rates are similar. So, moving on to the next. So this is the lactate testing from, again, the same time we did the GPS one, which is what you've just seen. So, what is lactate testing? What does lactate testing show? It shows how much lactate is in the body, is in the blood at that given time. So, which then also means there might not always be enough oxygen in the body to be able to keep up with aerobic exercise and the intensity and pace of the game. So the body then relies on the lactate to make up for the lost ground on what the oxygen cannot make. So the lactate is also made energy without using the oxygen, and it helps with optimal aerobic training. Means it's helping us push through the barrier as people and athletes. So as you can see here, we've got a plus 25. So on the lactate testing equipment we had, you couldn't go above 25. So as you can see, 2 participants have hit optimal, whereas 2 others are very aren't hitting it as much. So it's separated in from before the game, which is the bottom one, first break, second break, third break, and end game. So they're the 3. That's why you can see 5 different numbers. What is interesting is participating 1 is showing that it started off building, then lost, then built again, then lost again. This could indicate that his heart was working a lot harder and that his aerobic fitness is a lot higher than maybe, let's say, participating 2 and 3. This is because of how high their lactate was and how optimal it was at the end of the game, showing that these might not be as fit as participation 1, whereas participating 4 didn't hit optimal or not as close as what we would have liked. Maybe this is due to him being a lot fitter again. But the higher the intensity, and the higher the lactate is, more intensity that it was and how they played. And obviously the lower, so your 3.3 is less intense. So that shows that when we started, they wasn't working hard, they wasn't stressed, their heart wasn't working over time, that it was just sat at a normal rate. So moving on to the next. So this one, again, is a lactate testing, but this is from a basketball team that was out in America. As you can see here, the lactate is maximalising all 4 of the participants. And this might be due to how they are being trained. This was a game life situation, so they might have been putting in different sort of work rates in order to make sure that the game passed where it needed to be, compared to the end ball game where it wasn't as intense, because it was more there for the fun and getting to know about it and how lactate and the GPS system works. So when we're comparing the 2 days, what we can see is all these athletes here gradually got more lactate, showing that they didn't need that much more oxygen. Again, this could be due to their health. They might have a better health than the previous athletes, or they might have been working a lot more harder, because again, the higher the lactate, the more intensities, the lower the least. So what we're looking at, the key performance indicators, we're looking at the runs with the ball, being able to move the ball with the hand, moving the ball in hand, so having the ball and being able to get past defenders or moving back to make room and get other players into it. So we've got passes the ball, obviously like giving the ball to another teammate. We've got underarm and overarm passes, which links to that. So either underarm the batter, and then we've got overarm, which is overhead throw with one arm. We've got successful and unsuccessful. So did the pass meet the intended target, or did it not? So what was my intervention? So the intervention was to show we could get more successful passes and have a better amount of goals to make the game more engaging and potentially keep up with the intensity throughout the game. And that is what we saw in the video analysis, that the intensity stayed high throughout the third set of games, which was when the intervention was there. So what I did, I added a floater, which is a middleman who played for two teams. He had a different bib on to then make himself free and aware for other passes in order for other players to be free. And the team who had more players on the other side recorded more passes, and that's what you're going to see in here. But the floater could not be tackled and he couldn't score, because that way it allowed other players to be marked and get ready to be involvement in the game. So was there a change in behaviour? So what you can see is from game one. So there was a change in behaviour, is what you'll see in the next slide. So this is game one. There were only 13 successful underarm passes and a overarm. So that's only 21 successful passes out of 29. Yes, it's a high success rate, but we wanted more. We wanted to make it more. So what you could see by having an overload passes is that the passes went up and the team was able to make more passes each, whether that being underarm or overarm, but they had a higher success rate. And the graphs will show this. In the first game, it was significantly lower than the second game, is what you'll see in the next slide. So, game one. In team one, game one, what we saw was 13 passes was in most pass, which was an underarm. So on the right hand side of both graphs, you've got underarm, and on the left side, you've got overarm. The left hand side of the grids is successful, and the right hand side is unsuccessful. So what you can see here is you've got 14 overarm passes that were successful to the 7 that were unsuccessful. So it's gone up. So you was getting more passes successfully rather than what you was getting in the first scenario. Was this due to the intervention I made by putting an extra person in, giving someone the space to be able to get out, and then the floater to be able to run for a pass? But then also, what is very key to see here is that the underarm passes. So as you can see on both grids, it just above 25 on the game 2 and just below 14 on game 1. So showing the increase that it had on the game itself when it is getting played. This was due to the overload effect. So the constraints report. In a game of handball, it is known for players to be sent off, and I link this to the end ball scenario, that players can be withdrawn due to fouls and disruption of play. So my intervention was linked to this, a scenario in handball, which I carried across to end ball as a link together, and I used 2 different coaching tactics to get this intervention underway. So by making a floater, I introduced a short passing a lot more, as you can see here from the 2 graphs. From the graph before, the short game was a massive hit during this part. It was high success rate. The success rate from successful to unsuccessful was about 63% in underarm, and in overarm it was about 49%. So what is this called? It's called a player game approach, and this is where we make a real life situation into a training session where you can work in a game situation in this set. So during this, that's why I added the extra player, so they might have an extra player, but also I wanted them to imagine getting into the space and being able to receive the pass when it's needed. So there are my references. Thank you for your time.